Ancient Earth History, Part 5 Lemuria guest article by Robert Dawson.
Written in the contact notes of Billy Meier with the Plejarens, is a description of a great continent which existed in ancient times whose land mass once connected Africa, India, Southeast Asia and Australia and was inhabited by extraterrestrials. In particular, those of dark-skinned races who first established themselves on Earth in present-day Africa. The great Indian epic Ramayana and Mahabharata have references about the sunken land mass. There are also other literary references from the Sri Lankan text Mahavamsa written in the Pali language. Ancient seaports associated with the continent are detailed in the Tamil Sangam literature, as well as in the literature of Greek and Roman languages. The maps of Greek and Roman geographers/naturalists Ptolemy, Pliny and Periplus show the sunken land mass. The Arab historian, philosopher, mathematician and astronomer Abu Rayhan, al-Biruni also observed and documented about a great cataclysmic. Left a map based on writings of ancient Sanskrit literature depicting the continent south of India where the Indian Ocean appears today. Tamil nationalists of southern India today refer to this lost continent as Kumari Kandam, which means maiden or virgin/pure continent. Write a book written by a Tamil nationalist translated into English explains the evidence that the great continent once really did exist south of present-day India. But the first part of this story begins with the most puzzling question that has concerned Earth archaeologists for a long, long time. Where did the original Earth human being begin?
Excerpt from Contact Report 776.
The fact that everything was completely different 45 million years ago, that the first life forms changed or evolved and were able to spread to all continents from which human beings finally emerged, is not accepted because the knowers, the scientists, are of a different opinion and defend their hypothesis. And that human beings did not originate as apes or from beings of ape-like origin despite Darwin's fraudulent claims and machinations is also not accepted, just as it is not accepted that in Europe, in the Messel pit in Germany for example, the life form from which human beings originated can be found as an ancient relic. The Messel pit is a disused oil shale pit to the southeast of the district of the same name, which is located in Hesse in the district of Darmstadt-Dieburg. The pit is well known due to the excellent quality of the fossils recovered there, which have been stored there since the Eocene, including the fossils that gave rise to human beings, which were still about 50 to 60 centimeters tall at the time of the Eocene, carried a tail, and already had 5 fingers and 5 toes. This animal of that time was spread all over the earth, and in the course of time through its transformation/evolution gave rise to human beings in different forms, depending on its particular anatomical appearance, different species and color.
The photo on the left is a fossil, nicknamed Ida, discovered at the Messel pit in Germany as mentioned by Billy in the previous contact excerpt as being the life form from which human beings originated. This photograph appears in both Contact Report 727 and 790. The investigation of the fossil's significance was led by Jorn Hiram of the Natural History Museum in Oslo, Norway, who once stated that the fossil creature was the closest thing we can get to a direct ancestor, and described its discovery as a dream come true. Other researchers contend that the fossil's skeleton is very similar to that of a lemur, a small mammal that is only found today in Madagascar off the east coast of Africa. The photo on the right shows a very similar-looking fossil discovered at Fossil Butte, Wyoming, United States of America. At the time of its original discovery, it was touted as being the only one of its kind, yet it has a striking similarity to the picture of Ida on the left. The discovery of this additional fossil supports Billy's claim that the human being emerged almost simultaneously on the various continents. Nonetheless, it is identified on the National Park Service website as a lemur-like mammal.
This is contrary to the paleontological discoveries which, in the course of the 20th century, have repeatedly brought to light fossils that are assumed to be descended from common ancestors of human beings and chimpanzees. And since these all come from East Africa, it is erroneously assumed that this proves Darwin's thesis that the cradle of mankind lies in Africa. A theory, however, that does not point to reality but is far from it, because the human being emerged almost simultaneously on the various continents of the Earth within 800,000 years. Moreover, the so-called apes, to which the chimpanzees also belong, were living beings from the beginning, forming their own intermediate form between the apes and human beings.
Excerpt from Contact Report 790.
I am, of course, absolutely aware that the entire earthly science will deny everything that the human beings of the Earth ultimately developed from this being. Consequently, it is also claimed that another living being developed from it. But I do not care, because I rely on what Svarhoff explained when he took me to the Messel pit, showed me the fossil, and explained that he had personally checked everything to the last detail, and therefore knew without a doubt that the human beings of Earth had emerged from these beings.
Contact Report 727.
The lost continent of Lemuria, Akakumare Kingdom.
From Contact Report 799.
At that time there was a huge continent between today's distant Asia and Africa before it subsided, and the sea of today's Indian Ocean formed above it. When the Indian Ocean came into being, or rather when the giant continent sank and actually only the large island of Madagascar and smaller islands remained outside today's continent of Africa, and in the east the various large islands below today's India, as well as further east, for example, Indonesia, Borneo, Malaysia, Guinea, Java and the Philippines, and so on, and to the south Oceania and Australia and New Zealand, the continent was finished.
Several scholars in the United States and Europe during the latter part of the 19th century were puzzled by the geological similarities between India, Madagascar, and Africa. English geologist Philip Sclater, shown above left, pondered over the possible reason why there is a significant presence of lemur fossils in Madagascar and India but not in the Middle East or mainland Africa. Lemurs, photograph shown above in the middle, are small mammals only, found today in Madagascar, an island off the southeast coast of Africa. A lemur skeleton is shown on display in the above right and bears a remarkable resemblance to the two fossils shown earlier, one of which with certainty Svarhoff claims is the life form from which the first human beings arose. Their home is under constant threat of deforestation from the local people who try to make a living from the wood. Sclater went on to publish an article in 1864, titled The Mammals of Madagascar, in which he proposed a hypothesis suggesting that Madagascar and India used to be a part of a larger landmass he called Lemuria, after the lemur fossils which had inspired him. Sclater's Lemuria hypothesis was initially welcomed by members of the scientific community as an acceptable explanation to the way lemurs could have migrated in Madagascar and India in the distant past. However, this theory was eventually discarded after the continental drift theory became widely accepted in modern times. Nevertheless, the concept of a lost continent below southern India continued to remain popular until the 20th century, especially among the Tamil nationalists, who believed Lemuria was the same lost continent they referred to as the Kumare Kingdom. The map above was drawn in the 1800s, during that time that the Lemuria lost continent theory was still widely accepted in the academic field. The delineated lines show a proposed explanation of how dark-skinned civilizations in different parts of the region may have actually originated initially from Lemuria. Overlaid upon this map is drawn the geographical extent of the sunken continent, as identified by Billy in Contact 799: Indonesia, Borneo, Malaysia, Guinea, Java and the Philippines, Oceania, Australia and New Zealand. Ptolemy states instead that the dark-skinned people originally arrived to Earth where Africa is now and then spread east across the now extinct connecting landmass to those areas Billy identified.
But something else, can you tell me who are the oldest and who are the youngest human beings on the Earth, if one excludes the Earthlings whom were created on the Earth?
The first three peoples, who were the first to come to the Earth, were at the same time the red ones, the brown ones and the white ones. It was not until much later that also differently colored ones as well as giants, gigantic ones, titans and dwarfish ones as well as beings of nature came to the Earth, among others also dwarfs, from which much later, namely only about 21,000 years ago, distant descendants settled on the shores of the Sanura Lake and lived there until the embankment in the west of the lake broke and swept everything away. The differently colored ones who subsequently came to the Earth were exclusively very strongly dark-skinned and established themselves on the land that is today regarded as the continent of Africa, from where they then spread further, some to Australia and New Zealand and others to various other locations.
Contact Report 236.
Again, it is stated in Contact Report 799.
The last private conversation we had before you left was about our stupid researchers who claim that the dark-skinned human beings came to Europe from Africa, when in fact they went east to what is now Borneo and Australia and New Zealand more than 1.2 million years ago.
Above are three examples of Buddha statues exhibiting facial characteristics consistent with African origin. From left to right. Buddha statue from Khmer, Cambodia. A Buddha statue found in central Vietnam. And another Buddha statue from Khmer, Cambodia. Below is an excerpt from Anacalypsis, a meticulously researched and referenced two-volume treatise numbering 1436 pages by English historian Godfrey Higgins, first published in 1836. To return, however, to the history of Buddha, we find among the Brahmins an acknowledgement of his divinity as an avatar, or incarnation of divine wisdom, and a history of his as such. In the first place, Buddha was a Negro, or rather he was what we should now call a Negro if we saw him. His statues in the oldest temples of Asia are black as jet, with the flat face, thick lips, and curly hair of the Negro. In some cases the stone is black, in others, which is more to the purpose, it has been blackened, and that this is not the effect of accident is pretty evident from his teeth and the whites of his eyes being white and his lips red. Buddha has many different names, 16 altogether. 3 of the chief ones are Buddha, Gautama, Saman. Excerpt from The Eagle, a journal of the University of Cambridge, England, Volume 7. Page 147, printed in 1871, left the stone pyramid of Moray in Tahiti. Engraving from the 19th century, right, the stone pyramid of Tonga, a South Pacific island east of Australia. The equator regions have always been most prone to natural catastrophes, like earthquakes and volcano eruptions, according to Professor Karsten M. Storedvedt, University of Bergen, Norway. These tectonic processes played an important role in the disappearance of the ancient continent known as Lemuria to Western scholars. Sri Lanka, together with India, Indonesia, and Malaysia, were a part of this continent. Many islands in the Pacific and Indian Oceans are remnants of this continent that in ancient times covered the whole area of today's ocean. The descriptions of cataclysms in early literature when land suddenly went underwater are logical, but they should be proven to be scientific facts. This can be done with the help of seafloor analysis that is possible to carry out. Modern theories find supportive evidence both in ancient literature and language. History left one of the mysterious 7 pyramids on Mauritius Island off the coast of Africa. Right in a report by the University of the Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, South Africa, scientists have confirmed the existence of a lost continent under the Indian Ocean island of Mauritius that was left over by the breakup of the supercontinent Gondwana, which started about 200 million years ago. The piece of crust, which was subsequently covered by young lava during volcanic eruptions on the island, seems to be a tiny piece of ancient continent, which broke off from the island of Madagascar when Africa, India, Australia and Antarctica split up and formed the Indian Ocean. Lost continent found under Mauritius left statue on display in the Egyptian Museum. Right populace of a small village in southern China, circa early 1900s. In 122 BC, Prince Lenin, who died in 122 BC, speaks of references of Negritos in China as late as the Tang dynasty. In the Linie Kuchon, contained in Book 197 of the Chu Tang Shu, it is written, "At the people living to the south of Linie have woolly hair and black skin." In southern China and Southeast Asia, ancient skeletal remains represented the earliest inhabitants to be Negrilo/Negrito and Australoids. By the beginning of the present Holocene period, the population in China could be differentiated and placed into categories designating Mongoloid in the north, and Oceanic and black races in the south. Above are examples of Black Buddha illustrations from the Shang dynasty in China. Flying saucer shapes seem to be depicted in the sky above along with other beings in the heavens. Earlobes are typically depicted as elongated, not unlike the Plejarens. Below is an excerpt from Sex and Race, Negro-Caucasian Mixing in All Ages and All Lands, Volume 1 by historian J. Rogers, first published in the 1940s. Literary evidence of the lost continent of Kumare Kandam comes principally from the literature of the Third Tamil Sangam and the historical writings based on them. Many of them refer to the lost Tamil lands and to the deluges which ancient peoples believed had swallowed those lands. The Selapatikaram, a well-known Tamil literary work, mentions, for instance, the river Prahuli and the mountain Kumare surrounded by many hills being submerged by the raging sea. Shown above is the Bhagavata Purana, 10th Skanda. The Puranas relate the Vedic teachings to historical facts and events that explain the teachings of the Urg, Sama, Atharva, and Yajurvedas. The Puranas, along with Chandogya Upanishad and the Mahabharata, are often referred to as the fifth Veda. The two humans illustrated in the text are depicted having very dark skin. Examples of stone facings at temples in Southeast Asia. On the left is the temple in Angkor Thom. In the middle is a stone face at Angkor Wat Temple, Cambodia. On the right are the massive stone faces at Bayon Temple, Cambodia. Located in the Pak Strait off the southeastern edge of India is a chain of limestone shoals. A shoal or sandbar is characterized by a long and narrow strip of land typically composed of sand, silt and small pebbles that have been deposited over time. This strip of land was once believed to be a natural formation. However, images taken by a NASA satellite has shown this land formation to be a long, broken bridge under the ocean surface. Now called Ram Setu or Adam's Bridge, it extends 18 miles from mainland India to modern-day Sri Lanka. Below is a news article appearing in the India Times, a screenshot taken from a short Indian documentary about the underwater city discovered just off the coast of India near Pumpur. The Tamil word my Perume shown in the picture means roughly pride of the land when translated into English. The lost continent of Lemuria has been confused in the minds of many modern researchers and writers as being the same civilization as Emu. Information provided by Billy Meier in the contact notes makes it clear that this is not the case and that the Earth's ancient history is even more rich and magnificent than our historians of today can fathom.
Article by Robert Dawson.